The church in Haveringland is part of the Aylsham and District team, which is a team of 18 churches. We are organised in groups. So I'm a team vicar, and I look after a group of 4 active churches and 2 redundant churches, and Haveringland is one of those. And it relates to, I suppose, the biggest town nearby is Aylsham, which is where our team is based, and we're midway between Norwich and the North Norfolk coast.
Haveringland Church is very special for many, many reasons. When you approach it along the former trackway, it stands in the middle of fields surrounded by countryside. It's got a beautiful setting, and as soon as you step inside, it's like you've stepped back into history. It's a snap of life in Victorian times. It's been so beautifully preserved in here.
The link with the airfield is really key for its success as a festival church, because for a festival church to really thrive, there's got to be something that draws people to it, and especially in East Anglia where we've got hundreds of churches. The fact that we've got a picture in the church which shows a mosquito bomber sitting alongside the church at the end of the Second World War, it just ties into people's feeling of nostalgia for that period. And it gives us a way in to attract people to the building.
Our village is quite small. We have about 200 people on the electoral roll. The village has practically no services. We don't have a shop. We don't have a pub. We have no public buildings. We have no footpaths, no street lights. Most of us rely on private water supply. We don't have gas in the village. There's no public transport. So it's actually quite a special, unique community. So this is, in effect, the centre of our community.
In many respects, it's in good order. Nothing at this point is falling off. We do have some problems with the building to do with damp and rainwater disposal. And we also have those classic problems of rural churches, whereby there's no running water in the building, there's no heat in the building, and there's limited electricity supply. So we've got all of those things. But generally speaking, the building is in relatively good order.
When I moved here some 15 years ago, we had weekly services, which dwindled to fortnightly, which dwindled to monthly, and then the vicar left. Then there was a change of parish meeting personnel, so there was a new parish clerk, new chair of parish meeting, and actually a new vicar. And from those 3 key people, the idea of the festival church became a reality. We met, and we then asked Andrew to come to one of our parish meetings. And from that, the villagers came up with ideas that they wanted to see the church fulfil certain roles.
It was important because it was a meeting where we asked the question, what do you want your church to be? And we were starting from a 0 point, which is, for me, was a great opportunity because I could say, well, whatever we do is better than what you've got. And so we had the discussion about what is it you want to see happen in this building. We acknowledge that it's uniquely placed to serve you. How can it serve you better? And so from that, we developed a church action group. And the church action group, in terms of governance of the church, sat as a subcommittee to the PCC. Now, the PCC was made up of myself, a fellow cleric in the team, and a treasurer. And that worked fine for a number of years. And then the rules changed, which meant that arrangement wasn't any longer possible. And so at that time, we decided that we would go through a process whereby the Church Action Group became a fully fledged PCC, and that's where we are now. Well, I suppose the most successful event that we run, or have run, there's 2. One would be the Harvest Festival. And so because of our location in the middle of fields, that gives rise to the possibility of bringing in farm equipment and using the space around the church. So we've done all kinds of things at Harvest, and the most successful ones were where we had tractors arrayed outside the church and crop sprayers and children's activities. And that brought in over 120 people to that service a few years ago. And then the other thing that we've done a number of times is an event which we call 40s in the Field. It's not an act of worship, it's a social. We encourage people to dress up in their 1940s gear. We have a period music act here. We have food and decorate the place, and people enjoy kind of entering into that world. And that taps into a local appetite for that kind of thing as well. In North Norfolk, not far from here, there's a very popular 40s weekend, which brings people from all over the country. So we kind of thought that may be the angle to bring people in, and it's proven to be. We're going to run it again next year, I think. So when we started the Festival Church model here, there was a degree of cynicism and skepticism about whether this could work. And some of that was completely genuine and well-founded. But I remember a discussion with a lady who has dedicated her life to the churches in this area. After the first time we did the big Harvest Festival service, we had 100 plus people here. And she said to me that she didn't think she would ever see the church this full again. And that was just a really wonderful reflection of what we can do if we concentrate our resources around the festivals. If we go for Harvest in a big way or Remembrance in a big way, then we can bring the people in rather than trying to do it every week or every month. I suppose the other thing that's worth saying is the Remembrance service here is an important part of what we do. Again, because of the connection with the airfield and all of the history there, people are drawn to this place in November on that Sunday. And we've essentially capitalised on that on a number of occasions. So we had a 70th anniversary of the closure of the airfield a few years ago. And if you can believe it, we had over 300 people here. I don't know where we put them all, but we did have 300 people here. And it was an amazing service. And a lot of hard work went into it. But it shows that if you've got a reason to draw people to these churches, they will come. This church is part of a group of churches, which is then within a larger team. And so we have to think about resource management when it comes to the busy times of year. In Advent, we try to spread the services out throughout the month rather than concentrating them all in the last week before Christmas. So here we have an early Advent service, which is more reflective of the Advent season, and people still come to that one. And then when we come to Easter, a new tradition in these parts is our Good Friday Walk of Witness. And this church is included on a walk that goes between all of the parishes in my area on Good Friday. So there's that real sense that we are still connecting to the church's year. But in all honesty, most of our effort will go into Remembrance, because that's a big draw, and into the 40s in the Field event and Harvest, because those are the things that we know will bring people.
I think for me, the shocking fact was that there's some 200 people in the village and there are only about 12 people who regularly come. And we needed to make the church relevant to everybody. And that's why we offer such a variety of things. And I think just on reflection with all of the services we've had everyone from teeny tiny tots being carried into 40s in the Field to the people who remember being in the RAF during the Second World War. So it's a huge cross-section, and we have encompassed, I think, everybody within the village. And from my perspective as a villager, I believe that people feel more welcomed into the church, and that they have a kind of more of an ownership of the church. For a long time, we've had parish meetings here, which, since the pandemic, but before the pandemic, it has brought the community into the church regardless.
One of the things we've tried to do in the last few years has been to reach out beyond the parish as well, to offer something of what's unique here to the wider community. So one of the things that I treasure in this church is the silence and the quiet. And so we've pioneered a series of organised silences where people come together for 45 minutes of silence with some music at the start and music at the end. And this is an idea which came from something that happens in our cathedral. And every time we do it, we have people from Norwich, we have people from 10, 15 miles away, all coming because they've seen it and they like the idea. We've had people coming from local Quaker groups and completely non-religious people coming to experience silence in that context. And I think that it's something which is going to continue to grow. The reality is we would be in the same place as when I arrived, with the church still technically in use, but not practically in use. By now, I would think that the people who were dedicated to the church would have given up and lost their patience. Because of what we've done, we've allowed an outlet for people's enthusiasm and people's passion about the building and what it represents. And we've given a sense that there's a way of still being church in this very isolated countryside location. Well, I suppose here is where comes a slight somber reality check. And especially in light of the pandemic, our finances here have been hit very hard. In the few years we've been running as a festival church, we have raised income, but it's been through events. We don't have a long list of regular donors to the parish. We do have some regular givers, but most of our money comes from our events, which places us in quite a vulnerable position. But at the same time, I see it as an opportunity. If we can draw the people in, we know they will spend money if we've got things to offer them. So what's the thing that we can use to draw them in? And we're looking forward now to our next 40s in the Field, which will be next summer, as a big comeback for that model.
Originally, we wanted to try and pay our parish share. And through various means, we were trying to raise enough to pay for the parish share and all the bills that come with it, the foreseen ones such as electricity and the unforeseen ones such as the leak in the roof and the tiles slipping off. And I did a comparison from looking at the first 40s in the Field event which we ran, which was hugely successful, and the profit from that was almost £300. Several years later, just prior to the pandemic, we ran the same event and our profit was £35. The same amount of effort was put in. We were just very, very unlucky with the timing.
The Friends group has gone through a kind of rebirth just now. So there's been a loose group of friends for a number of years, but we've just reached out again through the contacts that we have into the parish meeting and the wider community and rebooted that. So they haven't raised any funds yet, but they're working to a new constitution, which we've written in line with guidance. And hopefully they will not just raise funds, but also be drawn into helping with events. So the people who are in that group are the same people who come and help when we cut and rake off the churchyard, because we have a conservation churchyard here, which needs to be cut and raked every year. And we rely on local help to do that. And it's those kinds of people who are willing to be connected with the building and give their time to the building, but they don't want to be drawn into a PCC. They're willing to raise funds for fabric. They probably don't want to raise funds for parish share or for ministry and mission. The Friends group, we're hoping, in the way that we've created it, will reach out to those people and allow them to be supportive in the way that they want and in a way which helps the church generally. We have actually considered it. And we were, before the pandemic hit, we were quite a long way down the road with a particular group. To cut a long story short, one of our other churches in the team hosts an escape game. So in Blickling, you can go and be locked in the church and have to find your way through a series of clues to escape the church. And this is all run by a company based in Norwich. And they pay us to use the church and they look after it for us and open and close it for us in that time. And we had hoped that they would be able to run a game here based on the airfield scenario. So they would set up a command and control centre in here and have people pushing aircraft around boards and things. Alas, the pandemic came at just the wrong time and it changed their business model and changed their aspirations. So they've not been able to commit. And I think we would be open to sensitive use of the building, but at the same time, people are quite rightly determined to keep the fabric of the building in its current state or better. The options we have for renting out this space are relatively limited. I suppose the thing I would add in here is that we rely hugely on the nucleus of volunteers that made up the original Church Action Group. So they are the people who have ensured the success of this festival church. They're the people who lay on the catering in a place with no running water and limited electricity. They're the people who keep the churchyard looking intentionally neat and tidy. And they're the people who keep an eye on the building and make sure it's in good order. So that group of volunteers is incredibly important. But also, I would add to that we've managed to bring to bear some significant resources from the wider community, and particularly the community payback scheme, which is run locally. We've had not volunteers, obviously, but the community payback scheme have been in a number of times doing deep cleans and work in the churchyard. And it's the kind of work that we couldn't do on our own. I think the big risk that we face right now is the viability of the church as a parish share paying church. The way that a parish share is allocated here means that this church has a very modest request for its parish share each year. But even so, especially in the last 2 years, we've struggled to get near to it. The demands of parish share and the difficulties that all dioceses are facing with their finances are going to make that discussion more and more difficult as time wears on. That said, because we've got the group of volunteers here, and because we're at a stage where they're all incredibly competent and knowledgeable and able to do their jobs without me interfering all the time, the actual ministry cost for this parish is very small compared to, say, Corston, my biggest parish, which is where I spend most of my time. So we can justify a very small parish share contribution. The difficulty is things like the pandemic, things that threaten big events. So it could even be just a bad weather. Having a low 40s in the field, for instance, really made it difficult to pay parish share that year. When you've only got 4 or 5 events happening, you need each one of them to deliver. And that's where the vulnerability lies. In a physical sense, this church is locked most of the time because of its position, isolated in the fields and not necessarily checked on often. We don't feel we can open it all the time. Now, we're hoping that will change. If we get a lottery grant approved, which is in at the moment, we'll be introducing an automatic lock-off system, so the doors will open in the daytime and close at night. But I think the more broad point is about people's feeling about the church, whether it's open or closed. The way we communicate that the church is open is by doing things, by having popular events, by having events where the cars are streaming in and there's not enough space to park, where people are spilling out outside with their refreshments and enjoying the sunshine in the churchyard. That does its own publicity, and that tells people that the church is open for business. So I would hope that the church in 10 years will be a physically different place. I hope it will be drier and warmer, and there'll be toilet facilities and kitchen facilities here. And that's really important because that will transform the events that we're able to do here, and the way in which we can do them. So rather than carrying huge containers of water in order to do catering for an event, we can just turn on a tap. And that will be huge for our volunteers. I think that the church will still be in the same situation as a festival church. I hope it will be paying more parish share than it is now. And I hope it will have healthy finances. That will depend on whether we can forge new links with different groups to use the building more and to create some revenue from the space. If a church is considering the festival church model, it needs to be realistic about what that will deliver. For me, the festival church model offers opportunities to see the church in a different way, to see the building in a different way, and to link in new ways with the community. What it's not is a magic solution to all your woes. It won't take away your parish share, the need to maintain the building, the need to pay your insurance. And in fact, those things can possibly be even harder because you've not got regular collections and things. But what it does do, I think, if you fully embrace it, is to allow a community to say, this is our church. How can it serve us in a different way? And how can we serve it in a different way, rather than just going on a Sunday morning for a service of matins or communion? How does this church reinvent itself? And I really, truly believe that Festival Church gives options for people to explore the mission of that church in a different way.
I think it also offers a chance for us as current custodians to make the church building in the community a viable place and somewhere where the community want to come, where they can celebrate the heritage. We need to make it relevant to the community. We need to make it relevant to the next generation, and for them to be able to see this as part of their heritage, so that there is a continuum, so that the church survives. And once people are drawn in, it's my hope that they will find that relevance in this space. This is a very special space. Certainly, our time is limited. I hope that in 30 years' time there'll be another person like me sitting here considering the future and saying, what a good job back in the 2000s, somebody made this a festival church. Look at it now.
Really, that it's not actually about the church. First of all, you need to deal with the people. And without the people, Festival Church will not be successful. What we did in starting at the parish meeting rather than in the PCC was really quite foundational to the success here. We grounded the success of this model in wide consultation, in broad discussions and idea sharing, and then in buy-in from that community. Our church action group came from that meeting, and it is still standing today as the PCC. And those are the people who are making this a success.
The other tip I thought about was that it's not for the faint-hearted. It's hard work. From the perspective of a volunteer, it is hard work, and it requires a lot of dedication and being prepared to come up here and get covered in cobwebs and go the extra mile for the catering.
And to learn new things,
yes.
To go outside your comfort zone.
Yes.
It's been a really good example of watching people grow and change and develop together as a team. And that's been fantastic to be part of.
We all came to the group with different skills, and we've all learned from each other and become, actually, I would say, a strong unit. And I think it's the interaction of each of the individuals who brought their own skills and shared those amongst everybody with the same aim, that we wanted our church to be relevant. We wanted people to celebrate our church in the way that we were. And look at it, it's a beautiful church. So it is hard work, but it's worth it.